Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to Encore's second ever launch week. I'm Marcus, I'm the co-founder here at Encore, and I brought with me Frederick, who's one of our most accomplished engineers. How's it going?
Thank you. It's good. Most accomplished. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll be your hosts today for this kickoff live stream. If you're watching on one of the platforms like LinkedIn or X, if you post questions on there, we might not get them into our system. So you can use the link on here, encore.dev/launchweek. And you'll find a link to the stream on StreamYard where you can post comments, ask questions, and we'll get them into the feed and we can make sure we answer them. We have some folk who have been waiting in the wait room for hours, eagerly awaiting today's stream. So Mohammed shared this, I think, like 3 hours ago. So he's had a long day waiting for this. Hopefully we can deliver. But we still have a bunch of people who are going to drop in and join. So we're going to kick things off a little slowly with the schedule for this week. So it's 5 days of feature launches and 5 days of live streams and community Q&As. So today is the kickoff. It's Monday, day one launch coming up. And then we have the rest of the week packed with 4 more cool features and more live streams. But before we dig into this launch week, let's recap the launch week we had back in May, where we launched Encore for TypeScript. It's basically the open source framework for TypeScript, bringing what we already had put out for Go to this time to TypeScript developers everywhere. So we launched this as version 1, generally available back in May, and the highlight features of the framework as we launched it was, aside from all the nice declarative infrastructure stuff, is really performance. So we benchmarked it and we showed that it was 9x more performant than using Express, giving you a lot higher throughput and much lower response latency, all while having no npm dependencies. And we thought that was a really cool headline thing. And it seems like the community also thought it was pretty cool. Our GitHub project has really taken off. We're getting close to doubling in stars since launching Encore for TypeScript. We're just shy of 8,000 stars right now. So if you haven't already, go to GitHub, find the project, and please give us a star. It really helps spread the word and helps get us more resources so we can make Encore even better for everyone. And then our second launch of the last launch week was adding support for Neon. So in partnership with them, we made a really tight integration, and we made it possible to use Neon for all your Encore environments. So there's a direct integration between Encore Cloud and Neon. So you can use serverless Postgres, which is really handy if you're just starting out and you want a cheap and scalable solution. And that's been really popular, and a lot of people have started using it. We also announced a partnership with Arden Labs where we provide discounted training, or they provide discounted Go training. So Arden Labs is one of the most established Go training companies out there. And in wanting to give back to our community, they're offering discounted training. And we as Encore also offer coaching and training support for anyone who wants to speak at a conference to build their reputation and share what they're working on. So if you haven't checked this out, you can find it on our website, on the blog from last launch week back in May, and you can find a bunch more information on how to use this and be a part of that. And then we also launched the Encore AI API creator for Go, which was our first AI powered feature. It was basically this workflow that you can see here on the right. where you could generate some API designs and then actually generate the full implementation directly from the local development dashboard. We thought it was really cool, but since then we haven't seen that many people pick it up, and we've delayed implementing it for Encore for TypeScript or Encore.ts. And now with AI-powered IDEs like Cursor becoming really much better than they were back then, we think the next step is not to build this for Encore for TypeScript, but actually to build much better support for any AI-powered IDE to build anything with Encore. So that's the next step we're going to take with this. So if you're waiting on this specific feature for TypeScript, we're probably going to give you something much more interesting than that down the line. Yeah, but that's it for the recap. So what's up for this launch week? So it's going on all week. Today is day one, and we're starting off with a feature we're really proud of, and it's something that we think is definitely going to be super useful for anyone using Encore for TypeScript. And it's custom middleware support in Encore.ts. And to talk a bit about that is Frederick.
Yes. So I've been working on this feature, and that's why I'm kind of presenting it today. So I think most people probably know what a middleware is, but if you don't, then middleware is a way that you can define functionality that run across all your endpoints or a group of your endpoints without you have to duplicate the code. So usually you use them for things like logging metrics, setting course headers, authentication, and things like that. And a lot of these features come out of the box with Encore, but there are use cases outside of that, like rate limiting and authorization. So that's why we have now this feature. You can switch to the next slide and talk a little bit about how you use them together with Encore. So as part of your service, you can now define an array of middlewares. So in the service config, there's a new field called middlewares where you just add all the middlewares that you want to run. They will run in the order that you define them there. You can switch to the next one. You can also set some options for your middlewares because you might not want all the middlewares to run for every endpoint. So you have a target option. And with that, you can configure if the middleware should run for endpoints that are exposed or that are not exposed, that require auth or does not require auth. You can also set if they should run for raw endpoints or if they should run for stream endpoints or regular typed endpoints. And we will also add things like tags here. Like on the Go side, we have a concept of tags where you can tag your endpoints and then say that these middleware should run for this set of tags, for instance. So that'll come soon.
Yeah, that's a good point that we should make. We're saying this is specifically for Encore.ts, but that's because we already have middleware support for Encore.go. So this is bringing Encore.ts sort of up to par in a way.
Yeah, I think we have had a lot of questions about adding support for it because there's like a lot of use cases outside of like that is specific for applications.
Exactly.
And so within middleware, you can do certain things. So you have access to the incoming request where you can, for a typed handler or stream endpoint, you can get the same kind of object that you get with the current request function if you are familiar with Encore, which is you get an object where you can access headers and path parameters and things like that. For raw endpoints, you access the raw request, and which you can do basically anything with. And to modify a response in a typed handler, or you will get the response back, and then you can modify the content of it, or you can add headers. We're also adding support so that you can modify the status code. For raw endpoints, you get access to the raw response also, so they can do all of these things as well. A common thing is that you maybe want to enforce some kind of rules, and that you would do by throwing an error. So the same way as you would throw an error within a handler or our auth handler, you can also throw an error within the middlewares, and that will be a HTTP error response. And you can, of course, also catch errors if you want a middleware that handles all errors that are thrown by your application.
Yeah, that's great. And we're going to look at an example implementation and then also do a demo. So I just want to shout to everyone in the audience, put your questions or your comments in the comment field. I think that works across YouTube and maybe LinkedIn and whatever. So put your comments in. We're going to answer all the questions at the end, but if you put them in early, maybe we'll answer them early as well if it makes sense in the context. But let's take a look at this example to start.
Yeah, so here is how you would define a middleware within a service. So you usually, or in your Encore applications, you have different services. You define it in the encore.service.ts file. Usually, previous to now, you haven't had any configuration options other than the name of the service, but now you can add this middlewares field where you define different middlewares. In this case, we have only defined one. We have inlined it in the array. And the middleware helper function helps you set these kind of options. So here we have a middleware that only runs for endpoints that require auth. And then the second argument is the actual function, which takes a request and a next as parameter. Request is the object where you can inspect the incoming request, and next is a function that you will call to call the next middleware in the chain of middlewares. Or if you are the last middleware, you will call the actual endpoints if you call next. So within the function here, you can see the comments. Like you can perform some things before. Maybe you want to look up something from the request and take a decision if you should throw an error or not. Then you run the handler by calling next, and then you can do something with the response and do something after the actual request has passed through. And I thought I'll show an example of where we implement an authorization middleware that just to showcase some of these things.
Let's move on to the demo, but before that, we have a question coming in from Simon. If middleware can be shared across multiple services, or if it's service specific?
They can be shared. You implement them. It's basically these simple functions that you see here. You can define them in a separate package and import them. You have to, for each service that you want to run them on, you have to add them to this array here. But you can share them across. Yes.
Fantastic. So cue the live demo.
Yeah. All right. So I have written a small application that is just a small user service. It has a authentication handler to make sure that people are logged in when they use the API. It's just for demonstration purposes. We parse the authorization header and parse out the string user ID colon and then a number. And that's how you are a logged in user. You shouldn't do that in your real application.
So
then we have a database.
A question from Nikita, if we can see the code of it on GitHub. I guess it means this specific example.
I haven't put it up there yet, but I could, if there is interest, I could share it. It's a very simple application, but absolutely I can share it.
Yeah, we'll put that up after this in
find a place for
examples repos or something, and we can post a link on Discord.
Yeah.
Cool.
But then I have just a simple database. I'm not going to go through the actual implementations here, but it's just some helpers to list users, get user by ID, create user, update user, and delete user that we use from our handlers. So that is stored in a SQL database. You can actually see the database is very simple. It has an ID and a name, and that's it. So we have defined a bunch of handlers. We have a create handler that creates users. We have a list endpoint that just lists all the users. Get by ID, update a user by ID, and a delete user by ID. And we can see them in the developer dashboard here. I should also mention that all of these have auth set to true, which makes them require that you're logged in to be able to use them. So if I try to call the user.list without any authorization, I get an authentication. I get an error. I will use my secret password here. And now I'm logged in. So now we can see that there are 2 users in the database. One is actually misspelled, so I will change it by calling the put endpoint. So now we have delete, we have get by ID and list. So if we pretend that we want to change the permissions here so that anyone that is logged in can view users, like get by ID and list, but only the people themselves will be able to modify their own user. So if I'm user ID 1, I don't want to be able to modify Marcus here, for instance. That we could
please
implement.
Don't modify me.
No, I will protect you. And that we can do by implementing a middleware. So here is our service configuration. We add a middlewares array here. And then we should create a middleware. We can call it permission. And now we use this middleware helper here so that we can say that we only want this to run for endpoints that require authentication. And I will do like that. And then the second argument will be the actual middleware function. So this function will take the request, which we can use to inspect the incoming request, and then the next function that we will use to call the actual handler if we want to. So first off, we can extract the metadata for the call, so that we can extract things like path parameters that we want to use to check, and also the method of the call. So on the request, we have a bunch of different fields here. We have request meta, which is the current request. And then we have some other fields here that will be populated depending on the type of endpoint. But in this case, we have it is a typed endpoint, so then we have the request meta object. And since it is an API call, we can cast it to API call meta in this case. And then we want to actually we want to check first of all, is this a request that will modify anything? And one way we could do that is to check if it is a HTTP call that is not a GET method. So we can check the method here. We want to check if it is GET. And we just call the next endpoint. I forgot that. And we pass request to it. We can actually just add this one here so it doesn't complain. So if it is a GET method, then we know that it's not a modifying request, so we just call the endpoint or call the handler. And then we want to check if it is a call that has a path parameter that is called ID. If it doesn't have it, then it is not an endpoint that we want to protect because it's not modifying a specific user in this case. So here again, we just call the endpoint. And now we want to extract the logged in user's ID, because so far we only have checked the request that is making, but we can extract that by calling get auth data. And we know that since this middleware is only running for endpoints that require auth, we know that it has a value. So then we can check the user ID of the incoming of the user and check if it doesn't, if it isn't the same as the ID that they trying to modify. We can throw an error. I can spell to. We can throw a permission denied error and do something like user this is wrong. So if the user isn't the same as the user it's trying to modify, then we just throw an error and say you can't modify that user. And then we only need to add this middleware to the array here. And that should be it. Like if it is the same ID as the user you're trying to edit, then we will actually run the endpoint as well. So now we should be able to directly see that in.
Yeah, let's see.
See if I have typed correctly. So I can still list all the users. And if I try to edit Marcus to not Marcus, then I get user 1 is not permitted to modify user 3. But so
I'm protected.
I should still be able to edit myself. And that worked. It works.
Fantastic. It works.
So that's a very simple middleware for permission control. I think permission control is I think it will be a very common use case for middlewares in Encore, or other things would be like rate limiting and things like that.
Really cool.
That's the
we
demo.
had a question from Stefan. Is there a way to dynamically enable or disable middleware at runtime?
You can't. No, you can't disable or enable them during runtime because we take all the middlewares that you define in your service, and then when we start up the application, we calculate for each endpoint which middleware should run for that endpoint. And so we do that like filtering beforehand, and then there's no setting to dynamically run them. Then you can inside of the middlewares do some kind of check and decide not to run them there. But yeah.
But that pre-calculation is also why it can be pretty performant, right? So it's only
exactly. We do that for performance so that you don't have to on every request calculate which middleware should run. We just run we calculate that beforehand, and then we know when the request is coming in which middlewares we should run.
Cool. Sebastian writes that this kind of permission middleware would work well with something like SpiceDB. Are you familiar with that?
I am familiar with SpiceDB a little bit actually, or I know about it. But yeah, I think you should be able to use this kind of middlewares together with SpiceDB and use SpiceDB as the database for your roles and permissions.
Cool.
That would be an interesting thing to hear more about, actually.
We're getting even more questions. Does custom middleware support asynchronous operations like DB queries or external API calls?
Yeah, they work the same way as your handler. So they are asynchronous functions, and you can call databases and APIs and can basically do anything.
Fantastic. And Teddy asks if we have an example with role managing.
We don't have that yet. Like this is no, we don't have that yet, but it would be maybe interesting to explore something like SpiceDB or something else.
All of these questions are also giving us good ideas. And if you have suggestions for the type of examples you would like to see, you should join Discord, which is encore.dev/Discord, and write to us there. You can put in the suggestion channel and request examples that would be useful to you. That's really helpful for us. I have another question from Nikita. If you use Encore logging inside middleware in the dashboard, you'll know that the log comes from the middleware. Can you sort of trace that back?
You will not automatically see that it is a middleware specifically. You will get a log in your endpoint. You could, of course, add some context to the log yourself, but that could be maybe something to think about if we should add something like that.
Yeah, another interesting idea. A question from Mohammed, can we opt out a middleware for a particular endpoint in a service?
You will be able to do something like that when we add tags, because then you would kind of use tags to decide which endpoint should and should not have the middleware run for it. Currently, middleware runs for every endpoint in your service, but then you can use these target options to decide which endpoint it should run for. And currently, it is pretty limited to that you can only run it for logged in endpoints or not logged in endpoints, exposed or not exposed endpoints, and then the type of endpoint. But there will be more options available soon.
Yeah, that's great. And another question from Simon: what happens if an error is thrown in the middleware chain?
Then it will be like the same as if you throw an error within your handler. It will, like if you throw a API error, it will be rendered as a HTTP error. Just like I did in the example, I threw an error when you weren't logged in, and that resulted in a proper HTTP error. And you can also,
if you have multiple middlewares chained, would it then continue to the next one and execute that?
No, it will stop execution there and render the error. It will only continue to the next middleware if you actually call the next method.
Fantastic.
And in the same way, you can also catch errors with the try catch block around the next call.
Another question from Stefan: what's the performance impact of adding multiple middleware to an endpoint? How long is the string?
It will be more JavaScript that run for your endpoint. So that will be the performance that you run more code for your endpoint. But I don't think it will be much more than if you add a code to all your endpoints. Maybe a little bit more because there's a recursive call to the next, to the next, to the next, but it shouldn't be too much.
Yeah, we haven't done any kind of benchmark yet, right?
Not yet, but we will probably
test.
It depends a lot about what you're doing in your middleware. If you are doing a slow call to some database or an external API or something like that, then of course your endpoint will also be slower.
Yeah. If you do slow things, it will be slow.
Exactly.
Words to live by. Yeah, let's see if we get any other questions come in. If you come up with a question later, or if you're watching a recording of this, ask questions on Discord. That's the easiest way to get your questions answered. So that's just encore.dev/Discord. And if you're looking to try this out, you probably should remember to update your Encore CLI. So Encore version update is always what you should do before you try any new features. And another question from Sebastian: wouldn't middlewares also be great for live updates to WebSocket clients?
We have streaming APIs for WebSocket APIs. So I think you would go for them. You can add middlewares for those endpoints as well, and then you would get access to the stream instead of the request. And you can do things there, but that I think would be more useful when you maybe want to implement a certain streaming API protocol where you do some ping ponging with the client and server before you actually get to the handler or something like that. But otherwise, I think streaming APIs would be the way for live updates.
Which is also a feature you had a hand in building.
Yes, right? Exactly.
So selling your own code.
Exactly. Use these things that I have built.
Built by Frederick. No, but when did we release streaming APIs? It was a couple of months ago.
The first big thing I worked on, and I have been here for half a year, so a while ago, but not too long ago.
Excellent. Yeah,
I don't remember exactly when it was.
Busy. What's next?
Exactly. I wondered that too.
Well, if you want to know what's next, you need to tune in tomorrow, because that's when it's happening. So 4 more days of cool features to launch, and 4 more days of live streams and Q&As and fun. So we're doing it every day at the same time. I hope you can use the same link. If you find that you can't, just go to encore.dev/launchweek, and there will be a link there that you can use to watch the stream. We'll make sure of that. So with that, thanks, Frederick, for an awesome live demo.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. Please tune in then. And now you should go and play with some middleware.
Yeah,
cool.
Let us know how it works.
Yeah. If it works well, then definitely let us know. If it doesn't, you can email Frederick at... Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.